Okay, part 2 for those of you that made it through. And again, I start with a trigger warning to anyone with mental health problems, anyone that's upset by subject matter concerning self-harm, depression, suicide, etc. One thing I found really ridiculous about mental units is they would wake you up at 7 o'clock in the morning to start your long day of being mentally ill. 7 o'clock in the morning, routinely, come and wake you up, everyone downstairs by 8 o'clock. To have a morning meeting, which is basically where you go around to the whole group and ask how the night was, how did you sleep, that sort of thing. And everyone, will try and outdo each other for who had the worst night, who deserves the most attention today, who's feeling the most vulnerable. Either that or people just wouldn't even say anything, people just refuse to engage whatsoever. One thing that I remember being really important to me is you were only allowed to go for cigarettes after you'd had the meeting and after everyone had come down from upstairs and everyone was assembled and everyone had the meeting, and then the nurse would take you for the cigarette. I don't know if there are other smokers out there. For me, I have to have a cigarette first thing in the morning before I can even have a conversation with someone else without getting into an argument. I might be a really bad nicotine addict, but after 8 hours without a cigarette I'm usually in quite a bad mood until I've had a cigarette and a coffee. Neither of those things you were allowed before you had these morning meetings, so they just used to kick off, as you can imagine. Anyway, you'd have the morning meeting, and then you'd have a half an hour break or an hour break, and then you'd have a group or two, and then lunch, and then another group or two, and then evening, and then nothing in the evenings. And the groups would involve different types of therapy, and different people would engage with different types of therapy. We had talking therapies, where they would bring up subject, or they would just ask how you are, and if you chose to contribute, people would talk about you, except you'd be the only one talking in therapy, so while everyone else kind of sat in silence rocking, and nothing ever got achieved. Art therapy and English therapy, they had a bit better response. Art therapy was quite cool. We used to make some really fucked up stuff in art therapy. Everything's inverted. You bond with people over strange things. Me and this boy both chose to hang our dads in art therapy. I hung mine in watercolour and he hung his in plasticine, but we formed some kind of connection over that. It was totally inverted from normal socialising. I remember one time my friend drew a picture of a pot on a hob of boiling water with a frog in it, and she wrote along the bottom of the picture, if you throw a frog into boiling water, it'll jump back out, but if you put the frog in cold water and heat it slowly, it'll boil to death. And it's a really good analogy for mental health problems. People think I would never get mentally ill because I would, I don't have a mind that would ever do that. I'm not like those people, my brain's not like those people. The thing that people don't understand is that those people are still just people that are having problems. There's no big sign that flashes up in your head and goes, whoa, I've got mental health problems. You do have moments where it hits home and you think, shit, things have actually started to get out of control, but you're a long way along the path at that point. Anyone can be suffering from mental health problems and not even be aware that they are. I was reading through my diary anyway, and there's some really fucked up stuff. Mentality, really fucked up mentality. What I said about trying to kind of outdo each other in groups and stuff. There was always this competition to be the most ill, and I found my diary, and it's a diary entry from. I'm in the unit at the time, and it's a diary entry from the day after Christmas Day, 2002, and it says, I'm just waiting for lights out so I can get out my razor blade. I don't feel particularly like self-harming at the moment, but I have to keep up, and that involves self-harming occasionally and having outwardly bad days. The truth is, I don't feel depressed anymore. Maybe it's the drugs. Maybe I'm hiding from how I feel. Maybe I just don't have depression anymore. Whatever the reason, I'm not going back to where I was. I don't enjoy it here, but it feels real. Realer than it did out there. Real life. Real people, real problems. And this wasn't just the mentality I had. People would self-harm for competitive reasons, you know, to be the most ill. And what I'm saying there, you know, kind of Stockholm syndrome kicks in, where you start to love the captivation, living in captivity. It's so safe in one way. Everything's provided for you. There's always going to be another meal. There are no sharp objects. Everything, you go to bed when you're told. You do what you're told. There's no arguments with mummy. You're going to do what you're told. But in another way, everything's so easy and there's no responsibility. You start to develop a bit of an attachment to captivity. One of the hardest things about being in a mental unit is that you're not allowed to touch other people. There's no physical contact rule, and you'll hear it all day long. Physical contact, physical contact. What you need when you're living under bright lights, under CCTV cameras, with other human beings, where you have to spend 12 hours a day in a really small room with those other human beings, is to be able to bond with them and to be able to derive comfort from other human. You know, it's the only human thing left, is to feel like we can still hug each other, we can still hold one another. And you're not allowed to touch each other. If you touch each other instantly, the nurses that have been watching from behind their plexiglass nursing station, mainly just because they're too fucking lazy to interact with patients, not out of any danger of the patients, will come out and tell you to break it up and stop touching each other. And that's really, really difficult. You spend all of your time talking to mental health professionals who don't care about you, whose job it is to do their job. And they have to maintain a professional distance from you. They can't be your friends. All of the psychiatrists I had, they were mainly white men, but all of the nurses were South African women, headed by a South African male nurse who was just a Nazi, just horrible to people with mental health problems. Ironically, some of the worst prejudice I've ever experienced against mental health problems has been in the mental health system from mental health professionals. I remember one time he pushed another patient down 2 flights of stairs, and she really hurt her wrist. And we complained about it, but of course you're just a mental patient. No one has any respect. How do they know you're not making it? You might be crazy. You might just be living in your fantasy world. That's something really hard to deal with, is you've lost all authority now. Nothing you say could possibly mean anything more than a note on a bit of paper. Everything is just another note. Nothing has any impact anymore. Nothing you do will ever have an impact. Another thing is knowing that you will forever be a mental patient. Forever now. You know that you have been a mental patient. You know that forever, on record, officially, it comes up next to your name, mental patient. For that reason, it's something that I've chosen to live with in a very outspoken way, because I'm not ashamed. I lost the plot for a while there and really wanted to die for a long time, really felt pain constantly for a long time. And the reason for that is that I tried to be an individual at the age of 15 years old in a school full of people, that it just wasn't a good idea. At the same time that my dad had kind of rejected me, and at the same time I was living a kind of lie, and actually a lie that I continue to live, in terms of what my mum thinks I am. All of these things came together to bring me down. I'm not ashamed of that. It was so hard when I was 15 years old, and I have depression in my family, you know, who says it wasn't always going to happen anyway, you know, who said it has anything to do with environmental factors. To this day, you know, it's a grey day outside, it's the 6th grey day in a row, and here I am talking about times in a mental unit. It's done something to me now where it's difficult for me to engage in really light-humoured popular culture. It's given me a kind of sense of I have memories simultaneously as I live my life of times of how the system works, how the system takes you from your life, puts you in this place, refuses to let you out until you perform the way you're supposed to. It's given me a lot of views on the world that other people think are bonkers. But then people live quite nice, sheltered life. a lot of the time. If you've never been arrested and you've never been sectioned or put in a mental unit before, if you've never done time in prison before, you have no sense of how out of control as you're walking down the street you actually are, you know, to the authorities. Again, I feel I haven't done a very good job of explaining this to everyone. It might be a subject that I come back to in the future. If you've got any specific questions, I'm happy to answer them. But generally, just thank you for listening, and I hope that anyone possibly that knows people that are going through this or are going through this at this time are able to draw some strength from the fact that, you know, I'm able to get up day after day and make YouTube videos about things that I care about and derive joy from doing that. And life moves on. Cool. Have a good day.